Team Fortress 2, a game I've been playing for 6 years now and never got bored of. It's a silly yet engaging game which you can play both casually and competitively. And, of course, it has the absolute best community that is full of only the friendliest, kindest and most supportive people. Right? Well, you already read the title, so you know my answer is going to be no. Team Fortress 2 does not have a perfect community. It actually has some incredibly vile people in it. Now, I'm not saying that it's completely rotten, but I want you to be aware of this. No community is flawless, including this one. The bigger a community gets, the more toxic it becomes. Now, I'm not saying TF2's community is inherently awful or anything. In my eyes, there's actually just a small portion of it that is genuinely toxic, and that minority doesn't really ruin the majority of players. But I want to show you that it too has flaws and to raise awareness to these issues. So people know that they're there and that they can work on them and help get rid of them. I need to point out that the things I'm going to discuss in the video are just examples and that not everyone experiences them. I also want you to know that these problems are not exclusive to TF2's community and that other game communities are even more toxic. But that doesn't really matter because the problem is still there. If I have 3 pieces of broken glass in my morning cereal, it doesn't make it any better than my brother has 5 pieces in his cereal. As long as these issues persist, I'm going to point them out and complain about them, and you should too. Well, let's begin with the first problem. Remember when TF2 became free to play? That was great, wasn't it? It's actually what got me into the game, and I'm really glad it happened because otherwise I wouldn't be here making videos today. And I'm sure it's how a ton of other people got into the game as well. Well, do you know what the veteran players that bought the game did? They started kicking the free to players. They even installed plugins to immediately kick them upon entering a server. And apparently they even did the same to Mac players. I mean, I can understand wanting to keep a community, but actively shutting down new members? And this isn't even something that has long since passed. Sure, the plugin is not around anymore, but there's still a ton of new players being kicked just because they're new. And I'm not even talking about kicking new players who join expert missions in MVM and then only play Pyro without upgrading anything and then not listen to the team. I'm talking about kicking someone who joins a match and has the audacity to play engineer and not know exactly where they're supposed to place buildings. And even if they don't get kicked, they still get mocked and made fun of. I can understand having a little chuckle at that guy who's in a place where they shouldn't be, but genuinely getting upset? Actually insulting them? Come on. Yes, free-to-players aren't the smartest. They do questionable things and can even ruin matches. But the ones that do enjoy the game are going to stick around and they're going to keep improving. I was a complete idiot back then. I only pocketed snipers on 2-4 to get the most points through assists. Yet here I am, years later, making guides on how to improve playing as medic. If I had been repeatedly kicked by elitists who want to keep their game pure, I wouldn't be here. Many other people wouldn't be here today either, maybe not even the viewer. Like them or not, new players are the future of the game, and if you block those off, you're going to have a dying game with a toxic community. I know, slippery slope argument, but my point still stands. Quick addendum, everything I just said about people hating on and kicking free-to-plays also applies to younger players. And enough people love picking on and making fun of children in the game. I think every one of us knows the infamous squeaker on voice chat, and while yes, it can be annoying, there's no reason for someone to insult that person. While one could argue that Team Fortress 2 is a game for older players, which it really isn't in my opinion, this type of behavior is still pretty disgusting. I mean, children can be much more sensitive than adult players, and targeting them specifically because of their age is just awful. Here's a topic that is pretty close to me, and that is people harassing TF2 YouTubers and streamers because they don't make the content they like or just stop making TF2 videos in general. I'm not even talking about Star here. I'm sure there were a lot of factors that made him leave TF2 and its community behind. And to be honest, I completely don't even care about him anymore. People just need to realize that he won't be returning to TF2. End of story. Stop asking him. No, I'm talking about those YouTubers that realize they don't wish to make videos about the game anymore for whatever reason. Maybe they're burned out, maybe they found something new, maybe they're just too busy. It doesn't matter, it's their life and their content. As someone pointed out on Reddit, no one man is entitled to play a singular game for the rest of their career. But for some reason, some people just don't seem to realize that. They think that their favorite YouTuber has to supply them with free TF2 videos all of the time, whenever they want. Alright, that's not too bad yet, let them be selfish. They'll only burn themselves out until they realize that this is not how the world works. Well, if only it actually ended there. But sometimes, and too often for my taste, it doesn't. And that is where it gets dangerous. I don't know if you've heard of a YouTuber named Miss Moth. I had heard of her, but I never really watched any videos of her. Well, one day, she realized that she didn't want to make TF2 videos anymore and instead wanted to broaden her horizon. And well, let me just read it to you in her own words. The game started to make changes that I wasn't okay with, and I started to not have fun with it. I tried to take a break and play other things, but I found that the more I pushed TF2 away and vice versa, the more alienated my community became. I tried to branch out into other things and I tried to make a more universal name for myself. I wasn't enjoying the content I was making, so I tried to move into something I liked, which is Overwatch. I tried to make myself happy. I was also trying to balance not failing university. Ultimately, I found balance and went on to make content I enjoyed making. The community was ruthless. I received emails and comments of threats, some of them personal, some even attacked my appearance. At one point, someone tracked down my personal Facebook and spammed me with messages trying to talk to me. At one point, my entire family was tracked down on social media and messaged about trying to get me to make TF2 videos if she knows what's good for her. I realized that if the community was this immature about their lack of content, why do they deserve my time and attention? The attacks came again after I unlisted my TF2 videos so nobody would have to subscribe to their TF2 YouTube channel. I just have one question, and that is, are you honestly kidding me? How can someone be such an entitled brat that they track down a YouTuber and their family on social media just because they want more videos? If anyone like that is listening, are you honestly so dense that you don't realize what kind of arrogant, selfish person you are? The videos are free. She is not forced to make them, and even if she was, she wouldn't deserve this treatment. That's like receiving free ice cream every day from the nice old man down the street, but one day, the nice old man breaks his back and has to go to the hospital and can't give out free ice cream anymore. And because you're upset, you decide to smash his windows in and follow him to the hospital and beat him up there. No YouTuber has to make content for you. Sure, you may be their audience, but that doesn't give you any right to treat them however you want. Yeah, it's sad when they quit, but don't take your frustration out of them. Be a better person and swallow it down. If you just harass them, you're just giving them more reasons to never return. Oh boy, what a great topic! I'm sure the comments are going to be very civilized. Yes, sexism in video game exists and TF2 is no exception. Talking about that fact doesn't make me a feminazi or an SJW. That's ridiculous. It's just something that shouldn't be there, so I'm going to talk about it. I'm not a feminist or anything, however, I just don't want people to be treated badly. A recent Kotaku article addressed this issue. Yes, it's Kotaku, take it with a bucket of salt if you wish. However, in that article there were a lot of examples of girls being harassed simply because of their gender. And this stuff happens in TF2 as well. A Reddit user named OnMark also described her experiences of sexist harassment against her. She mentions how people frequently mocked her voice, had people make fun of her name, wanted her to prove she was a girl or just talked about raping her, or that she was incompetent simply because she's female. Here's actually a short clip she recorded in which a guy mocked her after she refused to heal him because he insulted her.
What was his name even?
How dare anybody say the word bitch? I am offended.
Verbal rape.
I'm gonna play medic like every other girl on TF2 and I'm not gonna heal people who upset me. Charge use.
Are strong.
I have fucking pro binds. Even though I play on Valve servers.
I made a mistake even saying anything.
Nobody wants me on their team because I'm shitty and I'm a girl, but I have bind just cause.
She even stated that she hadn't been feeling comfortable playing the game anymore. OnMark isn't the only girl this happens to in TF2, by the way. Here's a couple of examples of other female TF2 players being harassed. Now, This is a tricky subject for many reasons, so I'm not going to delve too deeply into it. The gist of it is basically just that sexism does happen to girls in games too. And that's something that needs to be stopped. The Kotaku article I talked about earlier also mentions how people can combat this. It asks for people to speak up about the harassment, telling the harasser to stop, as well as showing the victim that they're welcome. As a YouTuber by the name of Downward Thrust pointed out, telling harassers to shut up can actually make the situation worse by increasing the harassment, as well as that the harassers can't be reasoned with while they're harassing people.
Let me first start off by saying that this is exactly what you should never ever do. Toxicity and harassment is amplified when you interact with the attacker. Silence is actually your best weapon. Trolls and assholes online act out because they want vindication, attention, a release from their own inner hatred by demeaning other people. The more attention these people get, the more they lash out, so the suggestions in this article would only make the issue actually worse. That's because you don't change behavior while it's going on. You can't. When an individual is under duress and acting out, they are not in a state of mind where they can see reason and be mediated with. Harassers can't calm down. The only calming agent is when that person comes to the realization himself or herself that he or she is in the wrong. That person is only going to arrive at that conclusion when they detach from the game and walk away.
To an extent, I agree with him, as especially trolls feed off of the attention of others. However, there are many reasons for why harassment happens. Maybe the person just wants to make their friends laugh. Maybe they genuinely want to hurt someone else. Maybe they're just bored. Maybe they don't even realize that they're hurting someone. That means while it is true that some people want to hurt people for the attention, others might do it for different reasons or even unintentionally. In those cases, it can be actually quite possible for them to calm down after you tell them to stop. Downward Thrust also disregarded the effect that bystanders can have in these situations. He mentions how the other teammates perhaps just muted the harasser because they know it would only escalate the situation, and that it doesn't mean that they necessarily approve of the harassment.
Calling people who don't speak up cowardly bystanders is a complete generalization and in fact harassment itself. Perhaps your silent teammates are very nice people but have muted the harasser for one, or maybe they are smart enough to understand that feeding the trolls is the quickest way to instigate even more fighting. Being silent is not being tolerant or accepting towards toxicity, it's just being silent. The first and only step to approving toxicity is to go on the record and say that toxicity is okay, and you can't do that if you're silent.
And while that's true to an extent, the issue is that the victim doesn't know why people are being silent. In the victim's eyes, they just see that they're being harassed and that no one is even doing anything. While I can't say that it's as bad as bullying in schools, I'm sure that if you got bullied but no one helped you and your school didn't punish the bullies, you would feel incredibly helpless too. Now imagine how someone would feel when they get insulted by someone from their own community that they usually love, but no one else from the same community steps up to help them.
The best way to deal with toxicity in games is through incentives and punishment, and that is the responsibility of video game companies, not players.
Contrary to what Downward Thrust said, combating this harassment is also still partially the community's job, not just the developers. Yes, the developer can likely achieve more, but if you claim to be part of any community, but you refuse to actually do something for said community, you aren't really part of it. Well, here's what you can do. If you ever experience harassment of any kind in a game, whether it's because you're the victim's friends or teammate, or the harasser's friend or teammate, then please do the following. Tell the harasser politely to stop. Maybe they're not even realizing what they're doing, and as long as you're being polite about it, you're not escalating anything yet. If the harassment doesn't stop after that, tell them again, this time more firmly. Show them that you're being serious. If it still continues afterwards, or even gets worse, mute the harasser and/or just kick him. If you're not the victim, then you don't really have anything to lose if you just speak up. If the harasser lashes out at you, you can still just mute them. It's also very important to show the victim that you're there for them. Just say something like, lol, what a jerk, or that dude needs to get a life. That way, the victim won't feel like they're all alone. For victims of harassments themselves, I feel it's important to know that just because someone isn't using the voice chat or seems to ignore the harassment, that doesn't mean they don't care for you. Many people just don't turn on the voice chat, like myself, or they're distracted because they're focusing on the game, or they're just tired and can't deal with things like that at the moment. Keep in mind that while it may look bleak to you, there may be harmless reasons for why people aren't supporting you. It's also important to think about if it is actually harassment what you're experiencing. Maybe someone is just genuinely trying to push your buttons because they're trolling. They're not actually being serious, they just want to upset you. Other people may just have a very twisted sense of humor or a crass way of speaking to their friends, which doesn't translate well over to other people. Even I myself sometimes say things that my friends just laugh at, but which make other people gasp. This is why you should always tell the person to stop nicely, because as I've said earlier, maybe they're not even realizing what they're doing hurts someone else. And you yourself should also try to understand that just because you're offended, that doesn't mean you're automatically in the right and that they're in the wrong. Maybe it's just a huge misunderstanding and vastly different viewpoints colliding, and neither party is wrong. In my Discord server, I put up 3 main roles, and I do believe they apply to video games like TF2 and life in general. If you're wondering how you should act anywhere, not just TF2, I think you should consider them. The first rule is, don't be a jerk. You should strive to be friendly and respectful at all times. Don't just insult or hurt other people because you think it's fun or justified. I don't think it's ever justified, you should be above those things. If someone is mean to you, don't be mean back. If it's not acceptable that they're being a jerk, then it's not acceptable that you're being one as well. That just creates 2 jerks and doubles the problem. The second rule is everything in moderation. Sometimes it's alright to be a little bit of a jerk. Just do it in moderation. A cheeky comment here and there, pulling someone's leg, and even a hurtful joke are fine, as long as no one actually gets hurt and everyone is in on the joke. If someone does get hurt or tells you to stop but you keep going, you'd be violating rule 1 again. Don't be a jerk. Not everything is black and white, and being rude doesn't automatically make you a jerk, but if you let it go too far, it can. This also applies to things like being selfish. You should help out your team if they're struggling and not just do whatever you like all the time. The third rule is use common sense. If you don't know when too much is too much or if you're being a jerk, ask yourself this. Would it be okay if I did this to a real person? Would I like it if someone acted like that towards me? Should I really be doing this, or is there a better way? If you feel like you might be going too far, I think it's best to just step back and turn it down a notch. Remember that not everyone understands your humor too. Some people just don't understand mean jokes and they'll get hurt by them. You wouldn't talk with your grandma the same way you talk with your friends, so don't assume everyone on the internet understands your jokes either. I know these rules may seem silly because of how simple they are, but I do feel like many people forget them. So please, keep them in mind whenever you do something. If you're going to take anything away from this video, please let it just be this. Don't be a jerk, and don't let other people be jerks. One could easily disregard these things as people on the internet being jerks, which is sort of true. Everyone faces harassments on the internet, guy or girl, black or white. And it is true that if you want to be on the internet, you have to learn how to deal with these things. But I mean, certain people are very sensitive. I myself get offended very easily at times, and that's an issue I'm working on. Other people just can't do that though. I have some friends that are some of the absolute sweetest people you would ever meet in your entire life, and they'd love to help you and support you all the time. But if you said those things to them, I'm sure they would be utterly destroyed. I do think that kindness can stem from the fact that someone is very sensitive. And if that's true, would it be good to sacrifice that kindness in favor of growing a thicker skin? And I have to ask, is this really the image we want TF2 to have? A place where, if you want to be, you have to be able to withstand this abuse? I mean, this isn't just some friendly banter a la lol you suck, get a life. The examples I listed are some pretty serious cases of harassment. Do we really want TF2 to be the 4chan of video games? People keep complaining about League of Legends or even CSGO having a salty community, and do you really think it's best for TF2 to join them? I mean, this is one of the silliest games ever in which things like friendlies exist. Saying that if you can't handle or ignore this behavior, then you shouldn't play the game is a surefire way of creating a dying game with a toxic community. Everyone who can't handle it is just going to quit, leaving only a few toxic people behind. Oh boy, that slope sure is slippery! In this video I left out racism, which is also a big problem some people face, as well as other types of similar discrimination. About everything I said about sexist harassment should also apply to those types of harassment, however. I also haven't even touched on all the scammers and griefers and cheaters in this video, but I do want you to know that those exist as well. Now, you may be saying, but German, I never do these things and or always speak up when someone is being harassed, and that's great! But they're not all the problems the game is facing, there's also smaller ones. There's types of toxic or unsportsmanlike behavior you might actually do yourself, whether you want to or even realize. When was the last time your team was losing, but instead of helping them, you just crouched in the corner with a sandwich out, being friendly? And when someone called you out on it, or even just killed you, you called them a tryhard. Some people also kick players just because they're trying to capture the point on Hightower. Or they'll yell at medics for not healing them. We all get a little selfish and salty and toxic sometimes, and that won't ever really go away. But what we can do is try to keep it down. Even I myself sometimes do things I'm not proud of, but I am working on that. Think about the 3 rules. Don't be a jerk, everything in moderation, and use common sense. And if you experience harassment, whoever you are, ask them to stop, ask again, and if they don't stop, mute or kick them. If you want to be part of the TF2 community, and why shouldn't you, it has some great potential, then please do your part to keep it alive and well. I know this sounds very cheesy, but this game is called Team Fortress after all. Support your team, don't destroy it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. Please tell me your thoughts and opinions below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you ever stand up to harassment, or did you get harassed yourself? Please also leave criticism, as I can use that to improve my future videos. But for now, have a fantastic day and goodbye.